How's it going, guys? Mike here on the Tressa's Collectibles channel. I've been playtesting and having a lot of fun with RWBY the past couple of weeks, both with decks that you guys have already seen on the channel so far, and a couple of those that we haven't yet featured. For this deck profile, I want to share with you guys one of my favorite builds so far, 5 choice and 3 pants. Let's get right into it. Here's the deck list I'll be breaking down today. To start, let's take a look at our Climax Combos. For the level 1 game, we run a playset of Jaune School Dance, which combos with the School Dance Choice Climax. When School Dance is placed on our Climax area, if we have another Remnant character, Jaune chooses one of our other characters and they gain the following effect for the turn where, when they reverse their battle opponent, we can search our deck for a Remnant character, show our opponent, add it to our hand, and shuffle our deck afterwards. Jaune also has the second effect where when he attacks, if all of our characters are Remnant, he can give any of our characters, including himself, 2000 power for the turn. Our entire deck consists of only Remnant characters, so meeting the requirement for both of his effects isn't an issue at all. The cool thing about this Climax combo is that Jaune can activate it even when he's in the back row, giving a character in the front row the on-reverse search effect. Putting Jaune in the back row allows us to easily activate his Climax combo multiple times a game. For example, if we get pushed to level 1 first, we can field Jaune in the back row, activate Climax combo, and then push him up the following turn to respond to our opponent's level 1 characters, which is especially potent if we have another School Dance Climax lined up. His power boost ability also synergizes quite well with his Climax combo. Since we can stack multiple copies of Jaune's search effect on another character, we just need to secure one reverse to search our deck multiple times. Jaune can give the 2000 power to himself to help him reverse his lane, but he can also give the 2000 to another character to help them reverse theirs. And the deck is built in a way to have extreme bursts of power on our turn, so getting over even 10,000 power is quite feasible for the deck starting at level 1. Moving on to our other Climax, our level 3 Climax combo is Blake going undercover, which combos with the Activist Childhood Pants Climax. Her Climax combo is on attack, we can look up to the top 2 cards of our opponent's deck, discard any that we see, and put the rest back on top of their deck in any order, and then we perform the same action to our own deck. Bane Dream players might recognize this effect from the level 3 Mocha from Girls Band Party Volume 1. This is a really useful ability to not only increase the chance of dealing damage to our opponent by removing climaxes from the top of their deck, but to also rig our triggers and potentially end the turn with a climax on the top of our own deck, to increase our chances of surviving the next turn. Blake also has an on-play effect, where we can look at up to the top X cards of our deck, choose up to one card among them, add it to our hand without showing our opponent, and discard the rest, where X is equal to the number of Remnant characters on our stage. This ability helps dig through our deck for anything that we still need, such as her Climax, a counter, or other characters. Now, you might have noticed something a bit odd with our Climax lineup. We run 4 choice Climaxes for the level 1 Jaune combo, 3 pans for the level 3 Blake combo, and 1 empty choice trigger just for the sake of running an extra choice trigger. The reason I choose to run an empty choice trigger over the 4th copy of the Blake Climax is that I would rather trigger more choice triggers than pants triggers throughout the course of the game, and the Blake's on-play effect can generally dig through enough cards in our deck to find a pants climax at level 3 anyways. In my experience, getting the pants climax in our hand at level 3 has rarely been an issue. Now that we've gone over our Climax combos, let's go ahead and jump right into the rest of our deck list, starting with our level 0 game. We run 19 level 0s, which is a very comfortable number that allows us to consistently draw into multiple level 0s in the first several turns. Let's take a look at what these level 0s do, starting with Pyrrha, Fall Maiden's Vessel Candidate. Pyrrha has 2 effects, both of which activate when she gets reversed. The first is that she can go to memory if we have 2 or less cards in memory. And the second is to look at up to the top 3 cards of our deck, choose up to 1 Remnant character from among them, add it to our hand, discard a card, and set the rest to the waiting room. Pyrrha is a great utility tool to costlessly go through our deck, increase the quality of our hand, and also give us a tiny bit of free compression along the way. Since our list doesn't run oversized characters or runners, Pyrrha is our preferred attacker on our first turn if we go first. We run 4 copies because we want to see her multiple times throughout the game, and ideally we can send 2 copies of her to our memory for extra compression. Our next card is the star of our level 0 game, Sun Wukong. He gains 2000 power on play if I have another Remnant character on stage, and when he reverses a character in battle during either player's turn, we can pay 1 stock and put the top card of our deck into clock to look at up to the top 2 cards of our deck, add any Remnant characters that we see, and discard the rest. This means that he's a 4000 power beater that has the potential to recuperate 2 cards for us at level 0. Sun Wukong's potential for recovering resources allows us to be very proactive at level 0, and the deck actively looks to field 3 attackers as early as the first turn of the game, if we go second, and there is a character on our opponent's stage for us to reverse. We run 4 copies of Wukong because he is the single most important card for us to see at level 0. Next, we have 2 copies of Amber, Fall Maiden. Amber's effect is on play, we can pay 1 stock and clock ourselves from top of deck to salvage any remnant character from our waiting room. She also gains 1000 power during our turn, putting her at a respectable 3000 power. Amber is in the list primarily to accommodate the level 2 Cinder support that we run, which I'll talk about when we get to Cinder. Amber herself is also a very useful card not only during the early game, but also the late game, since she can salvage any remnant character. She can get us out of sticky situations where we just need to take 1 more damage to level up, which is most notable at level 0 and at level 2, so we can play our powerful Climax Combos at level 1 and level 3 respectively. Next up, we have 1 copy of the Weiss Booster Box / Supply Set PR, Weiss Team RWBY. She gains 1500 power on play for the turn, and also has the ability to blind stock a card from the top of our deck when she reverses her battle opponent while we have a Climax in our Climax area. She acts as one of our cards for Blue Splash, and also is a handy way to generate some extra stock. We have a lot of cards in the deck that can give our characters power, so it's not uncommon for Weiss to be able to reverse even level 1 characters. Moving on to our utility level 0s, we run 3 copies of the Nora Valkyrie Brainstorm. She's a tap self mill 4 salvage brainstorm, and also has the ability where whenever one of our other characters reverses an opponent's character in battle, we can give one of our remnant characters 500 power for the turn. There aren't many great brainstorm options outside of the Nora in this set, but she gets the job done perfectly well, and I honestly couldn't ask for more. The power boost effect is also relevant throughout most of the game, since we will be reversing our opponent's characters quite often. Our next utility card is Roman Towards a Heist, which can be found in the Trial deck. Roman's on-play effect is to reveal the top card of our deck, and if it's a remnant character, we add it to our hand and discard a card afterwards. He also has an on-death effect where we can pay 2 stock to search our deck for a remnant character and add it to our hand. Roman's primary role is to bolster up our blue count for our level 3 Blakes, and I've found his 2 effects to be very relevant throughout the course of the entire game. Top check at discard allows us to dig 1 card closer to hitting a brainstorm with Nora, or find a Climax with our level 3 Blake and level 1 Tai Yang. His on-death pay 2 search ability can be insurance against poor triggers. If we trigger 2 Climaxes in our last 2 attacks for example, we can use this effect to pay those 2 Climaxes out immediately before refresh, while searching for our character for future turns. Roman also allows us to attack aggressively at level 0 with more peace of mind, knowing that if needed, we can pay 2 stock to grab a character to use the following turn. Our next 3 cards are very standard utility type cards seen in many decks. RWBY Life-Changing Scene, Zwei, and Yang Framed. RWBY is a Climax swapper on play, which helps us get the right Climax in hand, and also has the on-play ability to look at the top card of our deck and either leave it there or mill it. Quintessential Quintuplet players may recognize this exact set of abilities on the Nino Doppelganger level 0, which we featured on our Quints deck profile, though RWBY isn't trying to impersonate anybody in this scene. Zwei is an on-play drop salvage for any remnant character, which also gives another character 1000 power when the salvage effect is used. Zwei also has an on-play mill 2 effect, and if any Climax is milled from those 2 cards, we can discard any card from our hand to search our deck for a remnant character. A very powerful utility card which can potentially both search and salvage characters. Yang is an on-play drop search for any remnant character, and also continuously gains 1000 power if we have 2 or more other remnant characters. My previous list ran 2 copies of Zwei and none of the Yang, but I decided to add a Yang for a bit more yellow, and her on-play search effect can always be useful. Next up, let's take a look at our level 1 lineup. We run 10 level 1 characters, 4 of the Jaune Climax combo we talked about earlier, 2 of the Glinda beater, and 2 of the Tai Yang Xiaolong support. Let's start with Glinda. Glinda Huntress to the Rescue is a Trail deck card, and boasts a 6000 power body with hand on court at the cost of 1 stock to play. However, in exchange for having below average power for a 1/1, she has the ability where, when another one of our remnant character attacks, Glinda gains plus X power for the turn, where X is equal to the number of our other remnant characters times 500. This means on a full board, Glinda will gain 2,000 power every time one of our other characters attacks, putting her at an impressive 10,000 power if she attacks last. Investing the 1 stock into playing Glinda will oftentimes be very fruitful long term, as she will most likely be able to reverse a character every turn, and we can simply discard a weaker character in our hand to encore her, so she can go back to beating over our opponent's characters the following turn. Glinda also has exceptional synergy with the Jaune Climax Combo. Remember that Jaune chooses another character to give his own reverse search effect, so we can stack multiple copies of Jaune's search effect on Glinda, and also use Jaune's power boosting effect on Glinda if necessary, making it feasible for Glinda to reach up to 13,000 to 16,000 power with minimal setup starting at level 1. For our last level 1 character, we run 2 copies of Taiyang Xiaolong. He gives all of our other characters 1,000 power during our turn, which further helps us secure reverses. His other effect is the startup ability, where we can pay 1 stock, discard a card from our hand, and rest Taiyang to look at up to the top 3 cards of our deck, choose any card from among them, add it to our hand without showing the opponent, and send the rest to the waiting room. Both Taiyang's power boost effect and Top Jack 3 effect help achieve our game plan with this deck, which is to play the Jaune Climax Combo multiple times in a row throughout the level 1 and 2 game. The ability to look at up to 3 additional cards alongside the cards we already get from Draw Phase and Clock Phase essentially doubles our chance to find another copy of Jaune's Climax so we can keep playing his Climax Combo. Moving on to our level 2 lineup, we run 6 cards, all of which are red, 2 Cinder back row supports, 2 Crow refresh counters, and 2 of the Maiden's event counter. Cinder infiltrating Beacon Academy is our back row support of choice for our level 3 characters, and it's the reason why we run 2 copies of the level 0 Amber. When Cinder is placed on stage from hand, if we have 2 or less cards in memory, we can send the Amber from our waiting room to memory. And at the beginning of our Climax phase, if Amber is in memory, then Cinder gets to choose a character and give them 1500 power for the turn. She is also a continuous 2000 power support to our level 3 and higher characters in front of her. Cinder really helps us reverse our opponent's high power characters, allowing us to maintain our board going into our opponent's turn, so that we can fully utilize the effects of our next 2 cards, the Crow counter and the Maintenance counter. We play 2 copies of Cinder so that we can comfortably send 1 to stock when we trigger a choice climax, while still having access to the other copy. As an addendum, be wary of sending too many Pyrrha level 0s to memory before playing Cinder, because if we already have 3 Pyrrhas in memory, Cinder won't get to send Amber to memory anymore, thus losing her 1500 power boost ability. Ideally, our memory looks something like 2 Pyrrhas and 1 Amber for maximum compression. Next up, we have Crow Branwen. Crow is a standard refresh counter. When we use Crow's backup effect to protect our character in battle, we may also choose to pay 2 additional stock to shuffle our waiting room back into our deck. We play 2 copies of Crow to consistently see at least 1 copy when we need it, and is part of the reason we run 5 choice triggers instead of 4. In the mid-game, triggering a choice climax can let us salvage the Crow counter to immediately pay out climaxes during the opponent's attack phase in a pinch. For our last set of counters, we play 2 copies of the Maiden's event. This event is meant to be used on our counter step during our opponent's attack phase. When we use the event, if we have 5 or more remnant characters, we choose our opponent's character in battle, and they gain the ability to not be able to deal any damage to us for the turn. We also get to choose one of our characters and they get 1500 power for the turn. Anti-damage is an extremely potent defensive tool, being able to completely lock a character out of dealing damage, and we ideally want to use it on a character who will deal multiple instances of damage to us. However, since we do need a full board to activate the anti-damage effect, it's imperative that we can reverse our opponent's characters with our own high-power characters, so that our characters are still around our opponent's turn. This is why cards like the Taiyang and Cinder support are so important later in the game, and why we should prioritize these 2 cards in our back row moving into the late game. Finally, let's take a look at our level 3 cards. We run a total of 9 characters, most of which are blue. Besides the 4 copies of the Climax Combo Blake, we also run 3 copies of Blake Belladonna. Blake's effect is that if we have 2 or less climaxes in the waiting room, she gets -1 level in hand, allowing us to play her at level 2. On play, we can discard a card to put the top card of our clock into our stock, and Blake also continuously gets 1000 power per every other remnant character on our backstage. As a stock healer, Blake synergizes well with the on-play effect of our Blake Climax Combo, which adds additional cards to our hand on play and does not heal. Don't be afraid to play a Cinder back row and 1 or 2 Blake healers down at level 2 if given the chance, even if we end up with just 2 to 3 cards in hand as a result. Blake, supported by Cinder, attacks for 14,500, and is 13,000 on defense, which are very respectable numbers. Our level 3 game is also very resource efficient, and as long as we prepare our hand accordingly, going into level 3 with 2 or 3 Blake Climax Combos and a Crow or Maiden's Event should be enough gas to last us the rest of the game. Next up, we play one copy of Neapolitan. Neapolitan has two different on-play effects. First, we can pay 1 stock to salvage any Climax from our waiting room and add it back to our hand. Second, we can discard a remnant character from our hand to choose up to 2 of our opponent's characters in their waiting room and place them on empty positions on their stage. Neo is mostly used as a follow-up card after our first turn of Climax Combo with Blake, in order to salvage another copy of the Pants Combo to Climax again. Her summon effect can also help us get better damage numbers for our attacks, especially when combined with the Blake Climax Combos. Since Blake checks the top 2 cards of our opponent's deck for her Climax Combo, if we direct attack for 4 or 5 damage, we're giving our opponent a lot more opportunities to cancel. However, putting up level 1 or 2 characters for us to front or side attack with the Blakes for precise amounts of damage can mean the difference between a win and a loss. In my experience, Neo isn't as crucial to this deck's game plan compared to her role in, let's say, the level 3 RWBY Climax Combo deck, and we won't be playing her every game, but she can still be a very useful card to close out games once in a while. Last but not least, we play a copy of Salem. Salem gets 1000 power for every other character in our opponent's backstage, and she also has an on-play effect. On play, we can pay 1 stock to perform one of the following 2 effects. We can either stock swap our opponent, or we can mill the bottom 5 cards of their deck and burn them for X damage equaling to the number of climaxes milled among those 5 cards. In modern Weiss Schwarz, most decks do want to play a copy of a stock swap anyways to punish excessive stock compression, so the fact that Salem comes with an alternate second effect makes her just that much more flexible. If the stock swap effect doesn't do much to our opponent's deck, we can use the mill 5 effect to try to push for an extra 1 or 2 points of damage. Now that we've gone through the cards in our deck, let's take a look at our game plan, starting with our colors. The deck is tricolor, running yellow and red at level 1, and blue starting at level 2. Since we are a bit low on yellow considering it's our level 1 Climax Combo, we want to keep that in mind when clocking at level 0 and 1. Generally speaking, we should look to level or clock a copy of the Sun Wukong or Tai Ying Xiaolong upon reaching level 1. Sometimes it will be necessary to clock or level one of our Johns, but it isn't the end of the world if that happens. Red is our secondary color where we'll need it to play our level 1 Glinda, level 2 Cinder, and our Maiden's Event counter as well as our level 3 Salem. We have more red cards in our deck than the other 2 colors, so it'll naturally come to us without much effort. Blue, our tertiary color, is needed for both of our level 3 Blakes. We run a sparse amount of blue characters at level 0 to help with color fix, and ideally we get to level 1 of those blue level 0s. But don't be afraid to level a level 3 Blake healer or a Climax Combo if needed. Overall, color management in this deck is pretty easy as long as we prioritize our colors well and plan ahead. Now let's talk about our mulligan strategy. I've built the deck to be very aggressive at level 0 when we have Sun Wukong in hand. As long as we can secure 1 reverse with Wukong, we can comfortably tri-field as early as turn 1. With that in mind, if we're going first, we should aim to keep 1 copy of Pyrrha level 0 to attack with on our first turn, and then any and all copies of Sun Wukong, our Jaune level 1 combo, and up to 2 copies of Jaune's Climax. If we're going second, we should hard mulligan for Sun Wukong. If I don't have Wukong in my opening hand going second, I generally mulligan everything that isn't Jaune or his Climax. If we open with a hand that already has a Wukong and a copy of Jaune's Climax, then we don't have to be as aggressive in our mulligan, and can be a bit more lenient on keeping some other level 0s around to attack with. If we open with multiple copies of Jaune's Climax and don't have Jaune or Wukong in hand yet, I would generally mulligan 1 copy of the Climax away to try to find the other 2 cards. If we do draw into Wukong to get to tri-lane, we have a decent chance of triggering a Pants Climax, which would allow us to salvage the Choice Climax anyways. Let's go through some sample mulligans. In this example, I'm going second and my opening hand is 2 Pyrrhas, Weiss PR, Roman, and Jaune's Climax. If I know I can easily get a reverse on their first attacking character, I will discard every card in this hand except the Choice Climax to try to find a copy of Wukong. As long as I have any other level 0 character alongside Wukong, Wukong will get to be a 4k beater. However, consider the same scenario except one of the Pyrrha is a Wukong instead. I would now mulligan just the Weiss with the plan to attack with Pyrrha, Roman, and Wukong on my first turn going second. The difference in games where Wukong is drawn and gets a reverse and one where he isn't drawn is like the difference between night and day. Let's take a look at another sample hand. This time I'm going first and I open with Jaune, Cinder, Nora, Zwei, and Wukong. If we want to play a bit conservatively, we can just discard Cinder and plan on attacking with Zwei turn 1. However, we run enough level 0s in the deck to be able to discard a couple of 0s in our mulligan to try to find a choice climax, and still have a high probability of drawing more level 0s post-mulligan. So in this scenario, I would discard Cinder, Noah, and Zwei to try to find the choice climax, Pyrrha, and more copies of Jaune. But let's say that instead of Nora, we open with Jaune's climax. In this scenario, I would just discard Cinder and keep the rest of my hand, with the plan on attacking with Zwei on turn 1, and hope to draw into at least another level 0 character by turn 2 to attack 2 or 3 times. Moving on to level 1. Since our early game plan is so aggressive, it would not be uncommon for our opponent to hit level 1 first and play the Climax Combo characters. If that's the case, then we can respond and counter with our own Jaunes. However, in cases where we reach level 1 first, or our opponent hasn't fielded stronger characters yet, we can play our Jaunes in the back row and still Climax Combo. This play still allows us to gain advantage while playing the Climax Combo, but preserve this Jaune so they can respond to bigger threats the following turn, and potentially activate Climax Combo again. In terms of search targets for our Climax Combo, we generally want to search for Tai Yang support, Nora Brainstorm, and more copies of Jaune himself, with the goal of playing another Climax Combo the next turn. We can also grab Cinder if we don't have her already, so we can play her when we reach level 2. At level 2, depending on how the game is going, it isn't uncommon for us to be playing Jaune Climax Combo over and over again. However, if things line up, we can also play Blake Healer and Cinder Support to put up a big healer and stabilize in damage. At this point, we should start looking for copies of our Blake Climax combos. We should be in a good spot going into level 3 as long as we have Cinder and Tai Yang in our back row, 6 or more stock, and 2 or 3 copies of Blake Climax Combo in our hand. When we play down the Blake Climax combos at level 3, we should be looking for whatever we don't yet have, whether that be her Climax, the Crow Counter, or the Maiden's Event. Our Climax Combo isn't particularly explosive, so we don't usually expect to finish our opponent with our first turn of Climax Combo. However, Blake's Climax Combo effect allowing to rig our own deck alongside the defensive capabilities of Crow and Maidens allows us to have high survivability so that we can attack again the following turn. The level 3 game plan for this deck, compared to our aggressive early game, is more of a game of attrition that aims to finish the opponent over the course of 2 to 3 turns. Now let's go over some cards I chose not to play in the list. The first is the Yang Clean Cut, which has 2 abilities. When Yang reverses the opponent's character in battle, she can move another of our characters to the back row rested. She also has the on-play effect of revealing the top card of our deck, and if it's a remnant character, she can give any one of our characters 2000 power for the turn. The reason I chose not to run this card is that in the early game, if she whiffs her power boost effect, is quite a disaster, as 1500 base power isn't enough to reverse much of anything. Furthermore, saving a character with the clean cut effect at level 0 in this deck doesn't honestly do that much. We want our Pyrrhas to get reversed, and clean cutting other cards like Yang Drop Search, Roman, Zwei are all extremely low value. Our best target to clean cut at level 0 is the Nora Brainstorm, but we often don't need to brainstorm in the early game anyways, so she just occupies the dead slot in the back row, where we could otherwise be using the back row for copies of Jaune and Tai Yang. I'm also set on playing some Wukong in the deck, so she would compete with Wukong on getting reverses at level 0, further lowering her value. Despite the list lacking a bit in yellow and her power pump effect being rarely relevant throughout the entire game, I don't think it's a card worth running in my current level 0 lineup. Another card I chose not to run is James Ironwood, a really powerful blue utility card. He has 2 on-play abilities. First, we can discard a remnant character to draw a card. Second, we can discard any card to reveal the top card of our deck and salvage a character whose level is equal to or lower than that card's revealed level. The combination of these 2 effects is quite powerful, and I do think very highly of James as a card. However, I'm electing to run Roman and Weiss as my blue fix instead, to give myself more freedom with resource management. I value the potential extra stock that Weiss can generate me throughout the game, and I value Roman for the extra insurance he offers with his pay to search effect when I have a poor level 0 game or when I trigger poorly in the mid game. We have plenty of other ways to dig for cards that we need in the deck. Jaune's Climax Combo, Nora Brainstorm, Tai Yang Top Jack 3, Blake Top Jack X, Zwei Drop Salvage, Yang Drop Search, and our 5 choice climaxes are more than enough to get us what we need when we need it. Besides those two cards, I also wanted to touch up on the various tech options RWBY has access to that we're not running, starting at level 1. Since we play 3 colors, we do have access to most of RWBY's level 1 options, such as Raven Branwen, Adam Taurus, Uniform Pyrrha, Winter Schnee, and Neptune Vasilius. They're all great as secondary level 1 options, but I choose to play the Glinda 1/1 over any of these other characters, as I value her ability to consistently reverse almost anything my opponent has on the board multiple times a game. She also has particular synergy with Jaune's power boosting effect to even deal with opposing level 3 characters. If there's a need to deal with particularly problematic early play characters in your local metagame though, feel free to add a copy of the Neptune, which is a permanent removal option against our opponent's early plays. I would suggest a 1-to-1 swap between a copy of the Glinda for a copy of the Neptune. If we expect to play against a lot of 8-choice slime with a level 3 remove finisher, Adventure Time with a Jake and Finn finisher, and similar profiles which activate at the end of an attack, we can put in a copy of Weiss's father, Jacques Schnee. When we use this backup effect, our opponent's character gets sent to memory when they get reversed in battle, which stops them from activating their end of attack effects to further deal damage to us. I would recommend cutting a copy of the Crow counter for Jacques if necessary. Finally, if we're dealing with decks that have particularly problematic boards that we can't deal with, such as 8 Standby Dead Alive and 8 Standby Slime, James half Cyborg can be a blessing. On play, James lets us look at the top 3 cards of our deck and rearrange them in any order, and then bounce any one of our opponent's characters. He also provides a sizable power boost to any character on attack. This combination of effects should ensure that we dominate the board on our level 3 Climax Combo turn, which should guarantee that we return our characters to utilize the Maiden's counter effectively. I would replace a copy of the Neapolitan with James if we're finding ourselves outmatched in power at level 3. After all, Neapolitan is really only effective if we're already running the board coming back into our turn, and not nearly as useful if our Blakes all got reversed the turn prior. And finally, I want to touch up on some of the weaknesses of the deck. As the early game heavily revolves around getting a reverse with Wukong, if we play against the likes of Kaguya with the runners, or decks that have characters that bounce themselves back to hand such as Konosuba's Yunyun and Mob Psycho's Dimple, then we're going to be hard pressed to attack as aggressively at level 0. In these matchups, I would still aim to grab a copy of Wukong in case they don't open with the correct character, but I would also prioritize holding on to a copy of Amber if I see one. Another issue with the deck is that it does rely on getting a reverse at level 1 as well, so if our opponent has ways to deny reverses such as the Yotsuba Bouncer from Quince or level 1 Aaron from Attack on Titan, then we might have a rough game ahead of us. Overall though, I do think the payoffs for running these on reverse cards are well worth it, and smart play and knowledge of the matchup can hopefully give us fighting chances when we are unfavored. And that does it for our deck profile, featuring the 5-choice 3-pants build from RWBY. I've had a ton of fun playtesting and building this deck, and I think you guys will really enjoy playing it too. Let me know down in the comments section if you guys have any questions and comments. We'll be featuring a couple of gameplay videos with this deck in the coming days. But until then, this has been Mike on the Tressa's Collectibles channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one.